Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Innovation Conversation. In this episode, we talk about a possible new way that road signs could be beamed to your car, a new GPS walking stick, as well as one of Coca-Cola's biggest mistakes. You can find us at www.innovationnetwork.online. We really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Innovation Conversation. We're joined by Grant Vernon.
Episode 6, we made it.
We made it.
Yeah.
And a bit
We're
later
a bit late. We're sorry, but we made it.
A bit late, yeah. we made it. That's the important thing. And a bit later on, we're going to be joined by Chad Smith and Rody Vonk, and of course, I am Connor Wakefield. So, shall we just dive right into it, Grant? Do you have the first topic for us?
Yeah, I do. So I wanted to talk to you about a corporate innovation, and this one is too cool as an example. We see large corporates trying to work better with startup entrepreneurs, tackle social issues, but it's really tough to be a multi-billion-dollar corporation and engage on that level. The innovation that I found for today is called Henry, and it's a project developed by Nestle, where Nestle collaborate with startup entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, and create these projects that make the world a better place. And the website is amazing to just go and take a look at, see what they do and how they do it. There's projects with entrepreneurs in Egypt, which drive Nestle sales, but cut down on traffic jams. Using AI to make customer interactions more rewarding, taking action to replace plastic straws, and it tells you how they do it. So they put out these challenges, they fund sometimes up to $50,000 US, and then partner the social and startup entrepreneurs with Nestle corporate execs to fast track these projects. And there's some awesome success stories on there. So it's a great example of co-creation, a little bit of open innovation, and large multinationals cooperating with startup entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs. Very, very cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, I mean, how would you say that differs from like regular angel investing from big corporates? Do you think that this has a sort of unique factor to it, like that's a selling point, or?
It's not unique in the world, but it's a really nice angle for sort of corporate social responsibility plus innovation, plus startup, corporate sort of cross-pollination. It ticks a whole lot of boxes. And even though Nestle is multi-billion-dollar, it's a model that I think anyone, no matter what the size of your business is, could take and use. And sometimes the very best outcome from this is probably the startup pollination into the big corporate, plus doing something good, plus innovation. Very, very cool.
Yeah, so having an initiative like this and sort of sprinkling that innovation dust on it, I guess it's sort of mutually beneficial and sort of kickstarts into grand new things sort of thing, because that way, you can sort of see so many different avenues and while being a cause for good in the world. So I think that's so cool.
Yeah, and some of them actually create a commercial value plus a social impact, which is also neat, whereas often they're compartmentalized. So this is corporate social responsibility, this is innovation, this is open innovation, and this one sort of blends them together, which I think is pretty neat.
I suppose there's no reason why corporate responsibility can't be a win-win, benefit both parties. So yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and create a commercial benefit as well,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Everyone wins.
That's what we want. That's innovation.
Awesome. Are you ready to jump into the next topic, or do you have any more thoughts?
No, that's an awesome one. Road signs that could be ditched and beamed straight into your car. Kind of tell me a little bit about this one.
Yeah, so this one's really interesting. So Highways England, which I find an interesting name because England doesn't have any highways, but still cool name. Highways England. I'm not entirely sure what they do, but I think they're sort of like a road safety type of organization or something like that. And they're sort of using the power of 5G to sort of test an experiment whether we could ditch the traditional sort of traffic signs and just beam those sort of cues right into the car. So we already have this sort of stuff. You'll notice if you're driving with your Google Maps on, it will tell you the speed limit and things like that. So this is just that on a whole new level sort of thing. It would essentially be so in sync with where you are on the road that it's sort of it's totally safe to use in a real application, if you know what I mean. And it will just tell you all the information you need. That I personally don't drive. I don't have my driver's license, so I'm not sure what sort of things you do need. But yeah, all those sort of required stuff straight to the car on a sort of user interface. So Grant, would you use this or?
There's a few people in my street, Connor, that definitely need a stop sign like beamed into their car. But I love that we're starting to play with VR, the power of 5G, safety. I love all that. So this plays beautifully into that. Side story, got to tell you this one. I was at the Lego store the other day and talking about this VR type link. You take a Lego box and you hold it in front of a scanner and it brings the box to life in a 3D VR.
I think you'll find that's augmented reality.
Oh, man, it is. Sorry, over 40. I don't know what it's but very, very cool. And I imagine the power of a stop sign popping up on your dashboard is going to make you take a lot more notice than a static sign somewhere. So I love that.
Yeah, definitely.
Certainly made me buy more Lego.
Yeah, you just came out with a whole little Lego.
Oh yeah, because you see them in action, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, so yeah, I think this is great. I mean, why not? You know, we don't have to tear down all of the road signs by the time it comes out. You know, there'll be none of that. It could just be an extra sort of precaution at the start, and if it turns into replacing signs, that'll be cool as well. I mean, the one concern is that this would probably be in you know, with how long it takes to test, that this could be in action for a whole like year or two until sort of self-driving cars take over, and they'll be irrelevant anyway. But
still a cool case study though. Very cool.
Definitely cool. It's still
and you know what I love about ideas like this is it often just sparks something else. So if it's not highway signs, someone's going to get a spark of like, I could do that. You know? Yeah,
I mean, this whole project, even if it doesn't turn out to be viable, then they can pivot, which is a good sort of innovation language to use, and something good could come of the project overall. You know, it could be a cool product.
I'm imagining even if it was just traffic slowing by schools, you know, and you just got this ping, you know, sky's the limit with this sort of stuff.
Sky's the limit. Cool. Pivot into anything with that.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome. So I think we'll go into the innovations of the week now. My favorite segment. I think.
Oh, too cool.
I love it.
And we're going from we work to we walk, right?
Yes, we walk. Yeah, that's it. So we walk is tagline a smarter cane. So blind people. Obviously, tons of accessibility with getting around as a blind person. It's obviously really hard for them. So a company sort of did a walking cane and injected a lot of tech into it. So essentially, what it is and I'm not entirely sure on the details of the user interface of it. I'm being quite perplexed on how they did it, but apparently it's sort of like Google Maps integrated, right? Wow. So it's GPS enabled, and the blind person can sort of navigate a GPS map system in a sort of big city, and somehow this cane will guide the blind person to the right areas, sort of thing, and make their navigation a lot easier. Another feature which I think is really cool is that I think it's infrared rays that it uses, and it will sort of project them above the cane user's head, and just make sure that there's no objects there that they could bang their head on, which I imagine would be really useful, you know. So I really like this one. What do you think about this?
I love it. I've got a text here from the Guide Dogs Association Workers Union. Could be some legal issues there, but other than that, it's super, right? So it's a whole lot of different technologies blended into one that really helps a user segment that has a great pain, and it's pretty cheap and pretty simple to implement, right?
So it's interesting. In terms of cheapness, $500, which is cheap if you compare it to a guide dog, right? that's training a guide dog is so expensive, you know. And I mean the charities that sort of collect money for training guide dogs is worth every penny right now, because they're really valuable. However, you know, for a certain customer base, this is a really good cheaper option, you know.
Well, for $500 it's life changing, right? Or at least life enabling. That's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so super accessible. I could see it bring real value. So
I feel this is going to nudge RoboSloth out of first place.
I think Liter of Light is first place, but I think RoboSloth has a real place in our heart, doesn't it? Okay, so let's give simplicity first of all, shall we? What do you think out of 10?
I'm going to give it a 9.
9, yeah. I gotta say 9 because
it's like quite like advanced tech made simple interface.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, I'm looking at the picture of it, and there's not a single screen on it. That sounds obvious, but you never know these things. So it must be sort of navigatable to a blind person. So let's go 9. Yeah. Impact. What do you think?
I think that would be a 10 for someone with that need.
Yeah, I think
that's pretty life-changing, man.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at the user as someone who is, say, blind, I'm not sure if blindness comes in different levels, but blind to the point where they would need a guide dog, however, can't afford a blind dog. I think the impact would be a solid 10, right?
Yeah, or even just to supplement it, you know, you might have a slight visual impairment, or you might have other tools, but for the price, it's a massive difference.
I suppose maybe I have no idea how it works again, but maybe someone doesn't qualify for a blind dog. Maybe they're only for a certain level of blindness, and then this is an accessible tool that for people who actually don't qualify for that sort of support on the level.
Yeah, I guess it says helping visually impaired and blind people navigate a digital world without juggling a smartphone. So I love that, because you would need you'd need the map function, all that. Yeah.
So smartphones do have a lot of blind person accessibility incorporated in them. However, this would probably
blend everything together.
Yeah. So let's go for the last one, ease to implement. I guess there's a learning sort of curve for the blind person.
Yeah, and I mean, set it up, the research behind this must have been massive to get it to work.
Yeah. Should we go 7?
Yeah, sold.
Yeah, 7. Amazing. So that's really good innovation. 9 out of 10 for simplicity, 10 out of 10 for impact, and then ease to implement, just dwindling a little bit down to 7 out of 10. So really solid.
Yeah, cool.
Amazing. So that wraps up this segment of the podcast. If you want to stay tuned, we'll have Rody Vonk and Chad Smith joining, and we're going to go through a whole range of topics. So I hope you join us for the second part of this podcast.
Amazing. Thanks, Connor.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. So for this segment of the podcast, we've got Rody Vonk. Say hi, Rody.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
And we've got Chad Smith.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, so kicking off this segment of the podcast, I think we're going to start with Chad. Are you up for giving us your innovation failure of the week?
I am always ready. Okay, so we are going a little bit controversial this week. I mean, everybody in their time has had a Coca-Cola, and as we all know, Coca-Cola is one of the biggest companies out there, but Coca-Cola has also made its share of mistakes. Now, Coca-Cola, since its inception in 1886, had its secret recipe that somewhat changed, but it never changed its core taste until April of 1985, where it actually discontinued original Coke and started New Coke. This was met by many, many people not liking this, and the fact that they discontinued the product that made them so successful in the market angered many people, to the point where they received thousands upon thousands of complaints every single day. One person even started a lawsuit in order for them to bring it back. So this only lasted 79 days. That's how bad it got. So I think it was in July of 1985 when they brought back the the original recipe, and sort of had to apologize to everybody. And the original recipe has not changed since.
Wow.
Yeah, this was a big doozy.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, they just could have done some things differently. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but if they kept the original and sort of added this as a new product.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because in innovation, we so much talk about how important it is to introduce changes on a sort of quick level. So this is really interesting because they tried changing something and it totally backfired on them. So I mean, I suppose it's not surprising, is it? Because Coca-Cola, such an old company, and when you're around for that long, you're bound to make a colossal failure like that. So it's nothing for them to be ashamed of, I suppose. But Rody, do you think you could bring a sort of innovation expert perspective on this? What would you think they did wrong here?
Well, it could have been that they wanted to innovate because they thought they needed to innovate, and don't say that was the case here, but you could look at from that perspective. And if you look at innovation in general, you see a lot of times that organizations are innovating because they think they need to innovate. And I don't say they don't have to innovate, but you have to make sure that you know why you're doing it. What's your strategy? And don't just do stuff because you think you need to do stuff, you know. And what it also shows, it made me think of a story about peanut butter, well-known brand peanut butter. I think it was Calvé, and they did a similar thing. They changed the recipe, and they got these angry letters coming in. And actually, one person said, "You took away my memories." You know, so this shows how strong a brand positioning and the taste can be in people's minds. So when you want to change something and you want to innovate, make sure that you understand if you're solving an actual problem here or that you're just doing damage. You know, so that's my learning from this case.
Kind of the saying, "Don't fix what's not broken," sort of thing, and in
exactly.
this case, don't innovate for the sake of innovating.
Funny enough, that was the first line of the article that I'm actually quoting from. And to come back to Rody's points about why they're innovating, this was in the midst of their feud when Pepsi Cola was actually getting to a lot more numbers and stealing some of the market share away from them. And that was the reason that they innovated. But I think they just could have done a better job of not alienating their existing clientele.
Exactly. So and that's also something that you see many times in innovation, that we see our competitor doing something, so we have to do something as well. So again, I don't say you don't have to do anything, but always make sure that you understand why you do what you do, and not just, you know, you should also with, for example, technologies. I had in a training once, well, multiple times actually, people come up to me, for example, saying, okay, we need to do something with blockchain with our company. And I ask, okay, but why? Well, because our competitors are doing it. Okay, that could be a trigger to think of it, but always make sure that you realize why you are doing it and what the problem is you're trying to solve then, and for who, and not just do it because there's this technology.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Well, there was even a video yesterday in one of the trainings, and it was of Steve Jobs, and he spoke about innovating, but always keeping the client in mind. So don't innovate because you have the capability of innovating, but innovate because the client wants something different. Innovate for your client. And I think that's something that a lot of companies need to keep in mind when making these changes.
Exactly. So that's basically one of the other big pitfalls in innovation, that we don't keep the customer user in mind. And actually what you want is to be human-centric. So always have the people in mind that you're trying to come up with an innovation for.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Interesting. So moving on then, Rody, do you have a innovation tip of the week for us?
I definitely have. My innovation tip of the week is to keep things small. because what we see a lot in practice is that people and organizations that are innovating, they make it too big of a project from day one, which means it feels like another to-do thing on the to-do list, but we're already so busy with our day-to-day. It requires then a lot of time and probably also a lot of money in order to get started. And that's one of the biggest things that happens in innovation. We make it too big from day one. While you can start very, very small and take small steps, and each step of the way learn and get a clearer understanding of what your next step should be. So, and it can be literally as small as having an understanding of, for example, how you do a good brainstorming session, and having some valuable tools and techniques that will help you to come up with much more ideas than you will probably get out of your brainstorming session right now. And if you understand a technique like that, you don't have to introduce a whole innovation project from day one. You can start with effective brainstorming. And of course, that's not enough for a successful innovation project. But if you have an understanding of multiple tools and techniques that will help you to innovate, you can just start implementing these in, for example, already scheduled meetings. So then it doesn't have to eat up extra time from people. You can be the one, if you know these techniques and tools, you can be the one starting to implement them and just start doing them, you know. So, and you can do that already in that meeting that you have planned tomorrow, you know. Yeah. So that's always my tip. Don't start to sell a huge project in your company from day one. A lot of times you will get people that get reluctant to say, oh, that's too risky. That's also another thing, by the way. Then it feels too risky. And what you want in an innovation process is to make it, to reduce the risk every step of the way. And that's also what you do if you make things small and make it into bite-sized chunks. So that's my tip of the week, make it small.
Yeah, it's a really good one. So, I mean, I suppose that goes really well with a lot of people say that they want to make an innovation culture. And I suppose starting small would kind of be a key to that, because, you know, you don't have to be overwhelmed. If you start small, then you can make it like a really daily thing that you do. And then the more consistent you do it, the more ingrained it will become in your culture. So, Chad, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. We speak a lot about how people resist change. And I think this is a way that if you make these small changes and before taking your next step, sort of use what you've learned from that step, the previous step, in order to educate yourself on what your next step should then be. Making those small incremental changes will allow you to receive less of that resistance from people as well, which I think is a very powerful position to be in when you're trying to do these innovations, which in turn can turn the entire project into a much bigger innovation, because you're taking such small steps and not spending as much money and time on doing these things that you would have if you just took one large step.
Yeah, I suppose making small steps sort of makes you more agile, and you're able to pivot at key positions that where you need to pivot. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, it takes time. I mean, you don't do this overnight, but it actually helps to build that culture of innovation, because it becomes easier for people to join in, or because it doesn't eat up too much time from day one. Or to see those first small steps and the successes that came out of that, and then they might be more willing to join in the next step, for example. So there's all kind of things that will help you to succeed by making it small from day one. And then once you go through the process and have made steps, then you can allocate time and budget when you see that you're going in the right direction. You know, so.
Yeah,
you don't have to allocate that budget from day one, that big budget, but just as you improve and see where you have to go and succeed.
I think a lot of companies don't realize just how early they can prove traction on projects and prove that you are actually solving the correct problem. Definitely.
or
Right.
find out in time that they are on the wrong track and they
Yeah.
can kill that direction and go in another direction.
Yeah.
Sometimes the small changes can make the biggest results.
Definitely, yeah.
And you can loop that back around to what Chad's segment on Coca-Cola. Maybe instead of changing the entire recipe all at once, they could have brought it to market in a much smaller way. Yeah. Amazing. So are we ready to move on to my segment, which is the innovation tool of the week? So my innovation tool of the week today is it's a development platform called Bubble.io. Bubble.io, the really interesting thing about it, I only found out about this last week, by the way, but it looks amazing, and I've seen some of the projects that it's able to make, and it's really good. But the key thing about it is that it's for making apps, specifically web apps. However, you don't actually need any coding. So this is a bit different to sort of like your website makers, like the big ones like WordPress and things like that, which don't require coding also. But this one is for making actual applications that have real functionality on web pages. So from the ground up, you can sort of make things that handle databases. There's all sorts you can do on it. So you can make booking software, shopping software, things like that. So the reason that I am bringing this up on an innovation podcast is because in terms of sort of making a prototype, this is a really scalable option. So what Rody brought up in the small steps kind of thing, this is a really good option in terms of, instead of getting your development team or hiring coders to make your prototype, why not look at options where you don't actually need those skills in order to make a prototype get started and prove traction. So does that sound like a good tool for you guys? Or
Well, definitely. And as you said, Connor, it also resonates with keeping things small, because one of the pitfalls also is that once you go to the step of prototyping in an innovation process, and many companies fall into the build trap, as we call it. So if you're working on an app, they start to develop an app, so hire someone who can build the whole technical backbone, etc., but they didn't even prove traction yet. Tools like these, which you can use yourself with your team, you can probably build your first draft of a prototype in a couple of hours, maybe. So again, low effort, low budget, not too much time, and then start testing, and then see if you're on the right track or not. So definitely a good one.
Definitely.
I absolutely love this as a step between that wireframing stage, where you're sort of moving the things for the person, to a step where you can actually see how everything works and fits together, how the person interacts with something that would look and feel like an app, but wouldn't be the actual app or web page. And I think it's exactly as Rody says, not falling into the bull trap where you're getting a lot of people spending their time and money on this in your company. Rather just do it yourself. Take a couple of hours out. It's only one person's time. It's a lot quicker and cheaper than getting the entire design team on it.
Yeah, and actually a good point there is, compared to the wireframes, this is actually so scalable that I think it could wind up being your end product if you want to stick with it. So that's a really interesting aspect as well. But at the same time, you don't need much to get started. So it's definitely good for sort of both ends of the low fidelity prototype and high fidelity prototype.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Amazing.
Plus that if you start to hire people and build this technical backbone, etc., for your app from day one, if it's your first step in prototyping, and you're going to spend quite some time and money on it, it becomes harder and harder to kill the idea if it doesn't work, because you already spent so much time and money. So that then can be a reason in itself to try to push it forward to make it a success, because you don't want to go back to your manager and saying, "Oh, sorry, we spent $50,000 on this, but it didn't work. Sorry, is it okay if we kill it and move on to another thing?" I don't think that's a good message to try to get across to your decision makers.
Yeah, definitely.
No, for sure. That makes a lot of sense.
So with that being said, I think it's time to wrap up this episode. So thank you all for listening. You've been listening to episode 6 of the Innovation Conversation, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to episode 6 of the Innovation Conversation, brought to you by Innovation Network. You can find us by going to www.innovationnetwork.online.